You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us.
Hello and welcome to another Cosmic Energy Report. I am Emily from Emily and Her Stars and Things That Make You Go Woo.
And I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crumbs.
We're so excited you're back to join us for Aries because, holy cow, we knew 2026 was going to be interesting, we'll say, and it has certainly shown up with only the few days we've had now in a fire horse season. We are, of course, recording this episode quite early. We are recording on the 10th of March. So we are still a full 10 days away from Aries season, but Jupiter goes direct today. We've made it through the other side of 2 eclipses, and we kind of left Pisces season with a cliffhanger because we knew that second eclipse was coming, but we hadn't experienced it yet. And so there's a lot to cover before we even get to this new energy of Aries. How are you feeling post eclipses?
I feel like this year I am being rewarded for all the terror that Capricorn has been through for a while. So I think that I actually have had some movement happening. I'm still feeling a lot of the turmoil. I'm feeling a lot of the in between still. I'm still feeling a lot of the inner work that has to happen before I start to move forward. But I do think I've been actually seeing that forward movement. And I think I felt pretty confident last month in Pisces season. And I was kind of like, I'm going to say that things are moving, and they have been. I mean, slowly and not with a lot of the abundance and reward coming in, but I do feel like it is shifting. So I think there may be 2 very different camps right now. Emily and I were talking about, I think some of us are really feeling the movement and some of us are really still swimming in some of the muck and the water. I think that there is, 2 different realities. And again, 2 things can be true at the same time. And I think this year is showing us that that is a very prominent theme in general for everyone that I've talked to. Anyways, I feel like I've seen people on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's a great description. And the Cards and Cosmos theme this month was Muck to Magic, and this idea of how Pisces season is emotional and we're kind of priming the pump. We have tools, we have ideas. I think hopefully at this point, taken the time to envision the future that we want. That was a lot of what Spirit brought through for me in a lot of readings in February was get clear, because this Pisces energy, and we're still, like I said, we've got about 10 days left, but it was very much pulling back of the rubber band, right? Getting ready to launch us forward. And if you don't have that clear vision of where you want to go, what are you aiming at? It's just going to be shrapnel at the wall. Like something might hit, but it's not going to be that direct, just precise action that is actually available to you. So I agree. There's that feeling of being in 2 camps, those that are, staying grounded, watching the energy levels, watching your nervous system, really being okay to be in the emotions because they have been all over the place. That an emotional roller coaster. I told Kimberly yesterday, I was like, I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down. I jumped 3 timelines before I had my second cup of coffee. Like things are definitely shifting and moving, and, a lot of integration headaches and body aches and things, but it does feel optimistic. Not every day, not all day, but the underlying energy, there's some optimism. And either you have it or you just, I think, are not consciously aware of what you can choose to manifest in your own reality.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is looking at the cards for this month. I won't give any spoilers of what they are, but what I will say is one of the themes, I always try to look between different months, different times, and sort of see what the themes are within the cards. And something I was actually picking up on is that this month we have a numbered suit card later in the month, and we haven't had that since mid-February. There's like a solid chunk of time where we've only had either the court cards or we've had major arcana. We went from the Nine of Wands was the last one that we had too, which is also like a edge of the seat, almost there card. And then we've had the Page of Swords, the King of Cups, the Knight of Pentacles. Then we had that energy of the in between where we had the Eight of Wands was the card from the Gaining Light. So a lot of movement, but like very intense energies. And I think it is because of all those emotions. It makes sense because it's like it's getting into the archetype of like who you are at the highest point of your emotions, at the highest point of your intellect, at the highest point of like who you know you are and what's grounding you. And I think we've been asked to do a lot in the last few weeks with these eclipses. And I think it's something we couldn't have planned for. And I think that's why it's hitting people differently. The people that have just been staying grounded, like Emily said, and been focusing on themselves and how they can keep themselves feeling nourished and full and complete and whatever they need to do that, maybe it's not hitting as hard and you're having the realizations a little bit faster because you're like, okay, why am I feeling this? You're a little bit more inquisitive. Whereas the people that are just blindsided by it, it may be hitting you a little bit harder if you were just sort of in a flow and then all of a sudden got hit with some emotions. So I do find it interesting that this is the first month that we're sort of getting back into the day-to-day movement sort of feeling as opposed to just the hard-hitting energies of like, who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Like, I think that's what I've kind of been feeling into for the themes of the cards in the last little while.
So interesting that it has been all major arcana and court. And I knew that the eclipse season, of course, was going to bring massive change, whether it happened now or whether it set the seeds and was going to unfold within 6 months. Without a doubt, these are potent eclipses. The fact that it happened on the Lunar New Year with the fire horse, I mean, it just expands and expands. And then, of course, we had the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which we still are very much in the energy of. It's just fading, but they're not pulling apart quickly at all. So that's still playing in the background. Then we had that giant Uranus square Mars. And anytime Uranus and Mars either square or oppose meet, there's generally something quite warlike that tends to unfold. And I was looking at one of the astrologers that I follow and one of the tarot readers, and they were talking about just all of the things that have happened during this eclipse window. So I was just going to take a second to kind of list some of them off because I think it's been so much that we also have to give ourselves a break for what we are experiencing in our human. So, of course, we had the death of the Ayatollah in Iran. We had the arrest of former Prince Andrew for his ties to Epstein. And Andrea and I were talking a little bit before. There's still some underlying energy there about whether or not Charles will step down and abdicate and hand things over to William and Kate. So to be determined. There was that massive backlash over ChatGPT. In the United States, our government had really pushed for Claude and their AI program to become part of the US Department of Defense. And thankfully, the AI owners of that particular portion said, no, we're not willing. It's not appropriate to arm weapons with AI. And chat was like, oh, we'll do it. You want access to AI? Sure, come on over. We'll make a deal. So that's left a lot of sort of ripples that I imagine will lead to consequences that come later this summer at the next eclipse. We'll see how that unfolds. We also had the South Korean president, the ex-president, right, was sentenced to life in prison after he tried to enact martial law last year during the eclipses. Peter Mandelson, of course, the former UK cabinet minister and ambassador to the US, was also arrested in London for his connections and ties to Epstein. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't even get into the war that the US has seemingly started. And then one more thing I wanted to share is that all of these current leaders who are really pulling the strings behind so much of what is happening globally were all born on the day of an eclipse. So this is Trump, Netanyahu, this is Putin, and also the Ayatollah that also just passed recently. So this is massive and actually statistically improbable that all four of them would have been born in separate instances on the exact day of an eclipse. And then the Ayatollah son also was born within about 3 days of an eclipse and took power within about 3 days of the eclipse after his father passed. So it definitely leads to this feeling that there is so much more at play that we don't understand. And having the North Node in Pisces is this increased awareness of surrender to a bigger story and a bigger plan that we don't know. We're having to release our control, that Virgo South Node part that is saying, but we need to have our jobs. And inflation is happening. The stock market's going up and down. Now oil prices are getting out of hand. And I do suspect with Uranus now coming up at the 28th and anaretic 29th degree, which will come into play very much in Aries season, that we are going to see some more massive financial fallout from that. Whether it continues to be oil prices, whether it's stock market, all to be determined. But this is a month to definitely keep that in mind, that things could be topsy-turvy. On the other hand, and this is where it comes into the both realities can be true, a lot of the cards are very financially positive. So is it that it's financially not good for some and excellent for others? We'll have to see, to be determined.
Yeah, I do feel like that sort of dichotomy of like the two energies is coming through quite a bit. And I think that's why like last month I had pulled the cards and then I pulled like the shadow cards for those cards because I felt like we needed extra energy, like to represent that, to say, okay, maybe you're feeling this, maybe you're feeling that. And I think with all of those massive changes that have happened already in that list that Emily gave. And like she said, that's just like the things that are, in the news, breaking headlines. There's so much else that's happening. There's a lot more awareness being brought to things like the water usage the AI has and like the other things. So I think like as these things are being highlighted, when the spotlight goes in on it, there's even more within those situations that people are maybe not aware of previously that are now even pushing them further to react in these situations. And I think it is awareness just feels like part of the energy where maybe people who haven't had a strong opinion or haven't thought about something before, they're now being given additional information that where they're actually unable now to go back to the ignorance is bliss sort of feeling that they were maybe struggling to hold on to for the last while. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people even change their own beliefs, their own political stances. We're seeing a lot more people think about being a human versus choosing a team. I think that's happening a lot more. It goes back to even when we were talking about where things are now starting to feel top down as opposed to left and right. It's more about what these billionaires and these people at the top are doing than it is what each other are doing. It's more trying to unite against those people who have way too much power, way too much money, and seeing where reality could shift, where we all could have enough. That's all we want, right? Everyone to have enough. And I think if we all have that same mindset going into it, then yes, there are going to be still different opinions. As we were saying, two things can be true at the same time. But I think some things cannot be true anymore, and we can't allow them to continue to be part of our story as humans. And it's really interesting to see how much of this, how many different aspects of this are being brought into the awareness in these particular few months. And I think that's where, like Emily's been saying, April and July have a lot of energy behind them. And I think there are a lot of stories of humanity, like that Aquarius energy is coming out quite a bit. That Pluto and Aquarius is really trying to push us forward, I think, in a lot of these things with AI and humanity and community and all of these things. I think we're seeing elements of it continuously be brought to our attention.
Yeah, I think partly with this new moon in Pisces coming up on the 18th, so just 2 days before Aries season starts, well, someone was likening this whole series from, last fall through the end of this fall into early next year as going into surgery. And you've been prepped, you know what's coming. You maybe at this point we're starting to undergo anesthesia. April might be sort of when we have that first surgery cut when they cut into things. they will start repairing things, and like the major surgery under that we are expected to undergo happens in July. And by December, we might be getting our stitches out. So that gives you this idea of like, there's still some bigger pieces that are kind of come in and be part of this, but it will be for the greater good. It will lead us to something that we're going to have to recover from emotionally, physically, mentally, like on all fronts. And I do think that will be some of the Venus with a Mercury retrograde twist this fall, particularly in Scorpio and Libra. And all of the pieces that are coming up and are surfacing right now are leading to what will happen. What are the cards that are going to be at play by the time we get to July? And I truly do think we haven't completely solidified which timeline we're entering that with. It's like we're going under surgery and they kind of think it's a knee replacement, but there might be, a torn meniscus, or you might have other issues and we just don't know until we get in there. That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I think it will be like Emily said, we're going to have to recover from it one way or the other, but I think it's one of those things where it's a relief and, like, you're like, "Okay, I'm glad I had the surgery. Maybe the rehab is a little bit tricky, taking longer than we thought," but I think overall, it's the reason you got the surgery in the first place, and I think we will start to see more people acknowledging that. I think it gives me the energy of, like, when you find out a grandparent or someone has to go and everyone has their opinion on whether or not they should get the surgery. And then, like, on the other side of it, when they're healing and you see them walking again, it's like, okay, even if you didn't think it was necessary at the time, you're happy to see that someone else made that decision. So I have a feeling that will be a really unifying piece, on the other side of it, because I think there's always going to be that differing opinion that is fighting no matter what gets chosen. So I think if the energy is all pushing and relentless and we get to the other side of this surgery, I do think that Emily, like what Emily was saying, like those stitches coming out and, like, the realization that it was for a positive thing, I think that is going to be quite a relief at that point.
All right, so enough Pisces review. Let's dive into a little bit of an overview of what Aries season, just traditionally, without 2026 spices, usually brings. Aries always begins at the spring equinox. It's the moment when, here in the northern hemisphere, I want to say light and dark are perfectly equal. They are as well in the southern, and there it signifies fall equinox. So this is the first 30 days of that next transitional energy. This is cardinal, yes, and that it is initiating something new. So there is a very powerful force that comes with Aries energy. It's the very first sign of the zodiac, and it's one of a kind. It's the one that sets the tone and the pace for everything else that's following after it in this astrological year. Of course, rooted traditionally in ancient symbols of fertility and renewal. And it's the ram, although I always choose to see it as a sprout, as a little, even a fountain, or that initial energy of something coming to life. I also think that Aries very much embraces the idea of a baby bird and a nest that is not only demanding to be fed, um, but that it's unstoppable. It's like, I have a right to be here. I have a right to be fed. I have a right to jump out of the nest when I'm ready. Those are all things that birds do no matter what. And that's Aries. It's like, try stopping me. Life is too exciting. I'm too excited to get going to be held back by anything. Aries is, of course, ruled by Mars, the planet of drive and motivation and personal will. And it wants us at its core, really, to connect to our own courage and our creative fire. A lot of times I find people think that Aries is very masculine and angry and warlike and war at any cost. And I think there's actually a huge missing part to that story, because Mars also wants to fight for what's right. It's fighting for humanity. It's fighting a lot of times for freedom for women, ironically, in historical texts. So, this is an opportunity for us to use that motivation and personal will to fight for something that lights us up, to take initiative, to stop playing small. We've got Chiron now for the last couple of months in Aries before it moves on. And we've really, since 2018, learned how we have a right to exist. We have a right to be here, to take up space, that our point of view is important. We're collectively healing that. At the same time, not everyone's right is has to be at the top. And that's what we're starting to learn now is like, okay, well, whose voice is the most important? And where am I supposed to be putting this attention? So we have to stay mindful that this energy, while it fuels really bold action, can very easily tip into impulsiveness and anger and burnout because it's demanding that change kind of at any cost. So, personally, if you can move through this more like Robin Hood, fierce, and yes, there's maybe tights, but ultimately fighting for change and for progress, to stand up for something, that truly is Aries at its heart. It's not so much this battering ram on fire trying to overturn the castle and get in. And then with that Robin Hood, there's a heart at the middle. We're being assertive because it's our fundamental right to exist. And we don't have to be afraid to act because many, many times I've seen in charts, depression in Aries particularly shows up when you don't do something. If their fear is too great to make a change, that's where Aries tends to dip deeply, deeply into depression because nothing changes and it loses that will. It feels purposeless. It feels like it doesn't have anything to go after. So, I mean, that's exciting energy before we even get into the fact that there are going to be 7 planetary bodies in Aries in just a few weeks.
I actually really feel like the true Aries spirit is sort of coming through in the beginning of this month. I'm going to jump into the cards for the first couple days. Um, so for the 20th and 21st, right at our equinox point, at the end of that week, I feel like I do want to mention too that we left off in Pisces with the Knight of Pentacles and the Five of Pentacles, that pair. So a little bit more slow, sticky, not the best, maybe energy to be feeling, where you're just putting your one foot in front of the other and you're trying to get past your feelings of scarcity and feeling locked out and recognizing all I have to do is take one step at a time. All I have to do is keep planting these seeds. It's right in front of me. I'm holding them. And so that is sort of the energy we're coming out of. And then we get to this equinox point and we break up that energy with the magician. We have number one, right after we take the leap, we now realize we have everything we need. It really comes in like a bit of a spark, that fire energy. To me, the magician always has fire energy because they're holding on to that flame. It feels in my energy always like it's the hopefulness, it's the realization that things are moving. When you jump into the fool, it is that zero energy. It's that kind of I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm not certain, but I'm going to jump anyways. But the magician is like, no, I have all of the elements. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind is yes, we are going into spring. We're going into a new season, but we have all of the elements all the time. We have water, we have fire, we have earth, we have air. All of those are involved in the changing of a season. And, the ice is thawing, the air is changing from cool to warm. The surface of the earth is starting to show those sprouts, like what Emily was saying. And then we also have this fire, this creativity, this movement of what we want to do next. And it's fueling all of this change, this warmth that's coming in. And I feel like with the magician showing up for just these 2 days, it's not necessarily because it's only going to be around for these 2 days. I feel like it's going to be the overall energy. And when I was looking back, as I always do at the previous months, I also looked at gaining light, and the magician is the card for April. So I do feel very strongly. I knew as soon as I pulled it for this season, I was like, that is actually feeling more significant than just a couple days. And I feel very strongly that it's leading us through this end of March, this beginning of Aries season into April. And yes, that also means fire. It means a bit of spice. It may mean that it's coming at a time where we're not quite ready to make that change, but we have to keep reminding ourselves that we have everything we need. We have been through many things before. We will go through many things again. And this is just the season to keep marching through it. I think the people that put down all of their elements and tools and decide they don't want to do anything, again, like that is a choice. That is something you can do. But I think there's so much, especially in the way that the cards came through and gaining light, where we went from the Eight of Wands right into the Magician. That's fast moving energy. So we go from this energy of the Magician into the Chariot. So two back to back major arcana that have fire energies to me. And the Eight of Wands too. Like it all is a continuation energy. I think I said this in that episode. Um, and so yes, maybe it does feel like we get a bit of a calm moment here and there, but that Magician is the center because it's this reminder that, yes, there's really fast moving energy with the Eight of Wands. There's really fast moving energy with the Chariot, but you're in control. And I think that's the piece that we have to remember. It may feel like you're getting swept up in other people's energy at times, but try to pull back and remember you have the reins, even when you get into the Chariot, which I think we're really going to feel at that point. It's about you having the reins and choosing where your energy goes. And so I think this is leaning into more of the traditional Aries energy of knowing what drives you is that you want to see change. You want to see something different. You don't want to get held back in the sticky energy of like just the unaware, being unsure and having that Knight of Pentacles where it's like, okay, I'm doing these boring steps day to day, but nothing's happening and I'm frustrated. And this means, and again, the story we're telling ourselves with that is this means nothing's going to come from it. This means I'm going to be stuck in this energy forever. I think that's a story we've all been sort of telling ourselves. If we don't see the results within a certain amount of time, we do tend to give up. But that's not what this energy is telling us. It's telling us, no, you have everything you need. You just need to be more confident. You have to have that courage that Aries gives you to just keep moving forward and to not take no for an answer. Yes, maybe there's other background things that we're doing with that Knight of Pentacles. Yes, we still have to pay our bills. We still have to do the day-to-day things, but we can also choose to use some energy and put it through something new and see what comes of that. See if that becomes bigger than what we're already doing and more rewarding than ever. So that's sort of the energy I'm getting at the very start of this equinox, which I think is a great place to be starting a new season.
Wow, that's so powerful. And the fact that I always think when you get the same card for, similar energy, similar is like, I said what I said. The universe is like doubling down. No, really, it is the magician. I said what I said. And I always think with the magician too, when he's, holding the flame up in one hand, but also pointing down to the ground, it's like this as above, so below. And even though all of this energy and change is manifesting and happening in the cosmos, they're really showing it that it's us. We're the ones putting one foot in front of another. It's always bothered me that, I will just say pop astrologers, the other astrologers, will say that Aries is, the infant of the zodiac, or it's the baby Saturn, that your first life, if you come in as an Aries, you've obviously never had a round on Earth school before. And the thing that kills me about that is because Aries would not leap. The magician does not have the tools if it hasn't already had an experience. It has already worked all of that out and come out of Pisces and said, no, this is how it's meant to be. I'm going forward with this plan. Robin Hood doesn't just rob because he likes rings and gold coins. He's giving it back to people. He has a passion and a purpose behind it. So I do find that even though this is going to feel, like you said, it's not volatile. I hesitate to even say explosive. It's the fieriness. It's like change has to happen. We are at that precipice, right? We are at the fool's point. And the fool is willing because, again, he's got the feather of wisdom, that long feather that says, I've done this, I have it, and it's going to be okay. What's super interesting, so of course on the 20th, the sun moves into Aries. We have that spring fall equinox, the astrological new year. Mercury retrograde also ends the exact same day. And I think this is a kicker, and I just looked this up to make sure we aren't going to have any planets in retrograde for a minute. That's huge because Jupiter will be out at this point, and both Jupiter and Mercury are kind of holding us back in terms of, they're in water signs. These are action oriented planets kind of being limited in some way. So, what happens when you're feeling emotional about the tasks that you haven't been able to take, which I think is that pullback feeling we've had for all of Pisces, that liminal rubber band. We can feel it coming. And then on the 21st, Mars trines Jupiter. And this is really lovely. I like this kind of energy because while Mars is also still in Pisces, trine Jupiter in Cancer, they're both going direct. And so there's some compassion here, some pulling our motivation and our action to that very Robin Hood like higher purpose. So it's fast, it's a quick jump out of Pisces season, but I think it will be for the betterment of everyone in some way.
I love that. I feel like it totally matches up because the next energy we have is going back to our pentacles. This is why I was like, okay, this is just the magician is showing up early to be like, know that this is coming. Know that no matter what you're feeling, you're moving forward. And I actually love this because it's the Queen of Pentacles. And we've had a lot of kings and queens, which is going to continue. And I think it's for a reason. It's focusing on that part of yourself that is confident, that is sure, that is grounded. The Queen of Pentacles has everything she needs. She knows that. And everyone around her knows that. Everyone goes to her because she has that support, but she has boundaries enough to say, I only have enough energy for this. This is what my energy is going to. And she knows this enough that she's not going to get rocked. She's not going to be swayed by someone saying, oh, actually, I think you should put your pentacles over here. She's going to be like, I don't think so. This is where it's going. Thank you very much. But I have certain people I'm supporting, and I know that I need more pentacles for later. So I think the other piece of this is the feeling of being grounded. And that's what we've been sort of saying this whole time is yes, the people that are going to feel the best in this season are the people that are feeling grounded and confident that things are moving in a positive way. The people who understand that the only way change happens is with some discomfort, with some really intense moments, maybe difficult conversations, maybe having to hold back from spending a little bit for a little while until you see the right thing come across or until you have that next little bit of a reward come through. So it's not a negative thing, it's just a pattern. And when you're aware that it's just a pattern, it's not a punishment. That is the phrase that's sort of coming through. I think it's like the queen is ruling in a certain way because she's protecting her community. She's protecting her resources. Resources are a huge energy around the Queen of Pentacles that I always feel. So all resources, whether it's your energy, your money, your time, the queen is so good at managing her resources that it seems like she has more than she does. And other people see her as having a lot more resources than she maybe does. And so keeping that in mind that just because you might think, okay, technically I have this free time, so I'll use it for this, but maybe you need that to recharge, to feel grounded. The whole point of this is that you have to hold on to your own energy and know what is manageable. And this is based on the past. This isn't something that you're going to have to decide out of nowhere. You know yourself at this point. What drains you, what lights you up. And so it's finding that balance for yourself and keeping that magician in mind. Like, yes, this is an earth card, but you also have access to fire when you need it, to air when you need it, to water when you need it. And I think that because the pentacles, like the Queen of Pentacles in this deck too, is shown with like a tree and branches around her. So it's like obviously the water has also fed that tree. Obviously the sun has been shining for those leaves to be green. And like obviously the wind is what carries away the old and allows there to be movement without breaking because you have these roots. So keeping that in mind, I think will be all you need to do this week to weather the storms, whatever's coming through, is really holding on to those roots and that grounded feeling of knowing that you have more than enough, but sometimes you have to hold a little bit back for yourself.
This is an interesting week. I love that the Queen of Pentacles showed up because I agree. I think it's going to be a reminder energy of where your power is because this week it's got some serious depth. Okay, starting with March 22nd, this is where the sun is going to conjunct Neptune. So they have met up in Pisces since 2012. And now that they're going to be meeting up in this new 14-year relationship in Aries, they're going to be much more inspired action and less about dreamy, kind of inspired what ifs. So I think the powerful energy that's going to come from this, like you said, is that owning of your own power. No, this is the direction I am going because I am worth it. There is value, and I'm going towards the value. I always feel like this connection between the sun and Neptune can tune up the busyness a little bit because, right, the sun is the actual embodiment of the energy you're facing, and Neptune tends to blur the edges. But in Aries, it's like, if you don't have the whole action plan, who cares? You've got to go anyway. So don't wait for all of the plans to fall into place. It's just maybe pushing your idea past the limit of what you thought was possible. And I keep saying the universe is saying to us this year, make your dream bigger, make it bigger because it's going to get so much better than you can imagine. On the 23rd, Mercury is going to conjunct the North Node, and this is the third of 3 hits because, of course, they met once pre-retrograde in Pisces, once during retrograde, and now this is post. So Mercury is now retracing its steps back through Pisces, and that other conjunction was only about a week ago. So this is an opportunity for you to stop ruminating on what may have been holding you back and to break free in some way because, again, now that everything is moving forward, you won't likely feel stuck trying to rationalize everything. I think all of this Aries energy will be pulling you into something that keeps the synchronicities and the energy and everything flowing in the right direction. On the 25th, this is, of course, now the sun conjuncting Saturn right away. There's not much room between Saturn and Neptune yet. And we also have the first quarter moon in Gemini. Every year when the sun conjuncts Saturn, we call it the annual day of challenges. I don't love that name, but Saturn and the sun together kind of, it's like pop quiz day. Well, I always say Saturn is the high school principal, and it's like he walked in and he's like, "Oh, your teacher isn't here today? Okay, let's have a quiz of what you've learned in the last year." So, again, this is the first time in 30 years that the sun and Saturn have met up in assertive Aries. So, again, this could make you less likely to back down, which is a good thing. Own that Queen of Pentacles energy. Don't give up, but make sure that you aren't shattering someone else on the way. Um, I don't want to say you have to conceal your blessings, but like don't brag about it. The other thing, because that first quarter moon in Gemini is going to kind of be emphasizing the importance of where your mental energy is going. It's like you were going to feel the inspiration to see, oh my God, this is working. I can take it across the finish line and make something happen out of this. On the 26th, Venus is going to conjunct Chiron. Again, this is an interesting one because Chiron, since, late 2018-ish, Venus is going to meet up with it now in those late degrees of Aries. And this is going to be, again, the last time for about 50 years that you're going to have this opportunity for Venus to bring some healing insight to you in some way. So how can you become an unapologetic example of not playing small? Like your dreams matter and they can be loud and boisterous and big, and it's okay. Just something to lean into, I think, particularly, especially right after that day of so-called challenges. Um, and then we kind of get a break for the 27th and 28th. So I'll leave it there, but it's a spicy week.
I'm glad that the queen will be holding it down because that does sound very spicy. But I really enjoy that this week from March 29th to April 4th is bringing in more of that feminine power energy because we have the high priestess, number 2. So we're literally going from number 1, the magician, queen reminder, and then number 2, we're actually following a weirdly followable line here, which never happens. Usually we're jumping all over the place. So I really feel strongly that if you are able to hold that energy of being grounded for that week where you're maybe being challenged, there's some healing, that Venus energy, another feminine sort of planet, if you're able to really hold on to that and see the purpose of what's coming up for you and just look at it more objectively. We have had these reminders since Capricorn season to see yourself more objectively, see objectively what you are doing well, what you are capable of, but also maybe seeing where your blind spots are and acknowledging that like you are unfortunately a human, so you do have them. We all do. And it doesn't make it like you personally have more faults than other people. It just means that you're acknowledging them, which actually means that you're acknowledging more than what most people would. So if you're able to see, you know what, I always lash out when somebody asks me that question, or I always have a reaction when someone says this to me. Maybe take that as a challenge for yourself because you know that week of that day of challenges. Maybe the challenge is just seeing yourself more clearly in that sun. Maybe just seeing like, yeah, this is something that makes me a little bit spicy. So like, why is that? Is there a way for me to just say this is a thing? It's there, and maybe it's time for me to see it in a new light. And I think that high priestess energy does bring in that really intense intuition, these intuitive breakthroughs, this way of having your higher self give you a boost of information and that knowledge that is deep within you and you just aren't always tuned into. I think that also this is coming at a point where the energy feels very intense. And so the more you can take time out for yourself to have a moment to maybe meditate or just go for a walk and be open to inspiration. Um, there is that slow energy coming in. We have the Queen of Pentacles, who's very methodical. We have this 2 energy coming in with the High Priestess that you have to sometimes slow down in order to receive the downloads, to get the information. And yes, the air around you may be very quick, and maybe you'll receive the information very quickly, but I think it's if you're doing that with intention and also acting on it. I think there's this energy that I feel coming through a lot this month where it's like we had this Pisces energy where, yes, it may be very intuitive. You may have been connected to spirit a lot, but this is the point where spirit's like, okay, like if you are actually trusting me and we're having this relationship, you have to do something with that energy sometimes. Like what Emily was saying, that energy really connected where she was saying sometimes like you do have to like do something and take action. It's not always about just sitting and thinking about it and, you know, being like journaling. Yes, that is helpful. I think that's how we get to the realizations. But once we have the realization, you are going to feel that depression if you don't do something when the energy's there, or if the time passes by and that opportunity is closed, the deadline's gone and you didn't do it. You didn't put yourself in the ring for a promotion, whatever it might be. This high priestess is like the higher self version of you saying, this is where we take action. This is where I need you to be brave and to be courageous and to trust that you know more than others maybe think you do. And I think that's where sometimes it may feel like you're putting yourself out on a ledge and you're kind of like, okay, I'm the one out here saying that I'm going to do this brand new thing that no one else is doing. But it's okay. If you feel it in your bones, this is like coming through so strongly this month. Whatever you know within yourself, don't let people talk you out of it. Just do it. And if the inspiration or the download that you're getting is telling you that it's time to wait, fine. That's if that's what you feel in your body, but it's more about trusting yourself, trusting that guidance that's coming through really clearly with a clarity you haven't had in a while. It may be that might be why you're not trusting it because you haven't had something come through so clear with such big signs in a while, but that's what we have to just do. We have to say, well, I've got nothing else, so I'm gonna have to trust this and just keep going. And again, that action is the key with this.
Yeah, this is an interesting week. I like that it's the high priestess because there's also something about her, again, owning her power, like you said, really kind of leaning into it. And right away on the 30th, Venus moves into Taurus and it loves being in Taurus, right? Taurus is ruled by Venus. The thing that I think will amplify in some way this feeling is that there's a recognition with that Venus Taurus energy of like life can be simple. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. And a lot of times it's the meme like treat yourself. That comes up, indulge yourself, what delights you. Those are important, but at the end of the day, like when and you know this, Andrea, having studied mediumship, when you connect to spirit, they're never like, oh my God, I wish your spreadsheets had been more colorful. It's always like, those were the small moments when we gathered, when we had a meal, when we, you know, were impressed or felt something looking at a piece of art. That's like the essence of life. It's the thing you almost can't put into description because it just for you feels so simply overwhelmingly good. So I think this will be an important opportunity for Venus to travel through Taurus. Um, Again, it's going to meet up with Uranus at the final degrees a month later. And this is the last time they're going to meet in a Taurus in our lifetime. So there is something to be said about really getting clear. What do you stand for? What is it that you're going after? Um, right away, then, the next few days, we have the full moon in Libra on the 1st. It's going to be at 12 degrees of Libra. It's our only Libra full moon, of course, each year. I would encourage you with this one to look at business partnerships, friendships, someone that you, yes, it can be one on one relationships like marriage and things, but do you feel secure? Do you feel that harmony and that balance and part that lights you up? Or is there something that you need to kind of look at head on? On the 3rd, we have Mercury trine Jupiter. This is going to really kind of help you feel less stuck in that endless loop, that energy that kind of goes on and on and on forever. And we also have Venus square Pluto. This one I think is more important because Venus, having just moved into her home sign, is charming. It wants to take things at face value, but Pluto in Aquarius really instead kind of challenges you to bring a perspective of doing it a different way. Just because you always liked chocolate doesn't mean chocolate is the only answer. There can be something else. I mean, that's a very simplified expression, but you get the idea. There's more to the story than what meets the eye. So I think if red flags come up at this point, they're maybe not going to be so obvious. And it will really take just some skepticism, some critical thinking skills to look past what's being presented and know that there's something else coming in.
I really feel like that, like, critical thinking and, like, that energy is part of that high priestess where it's, like, being very certain of, like, what you're feeling and trusting it. So I like that there's that tie in there. For the next week, which is April 5th to the 11th, we have the King of Swords. Now, if we recall last month, we had the King and Queen together again, but it was the King of Cups and the Queen of Swords. So now we're moving on to the King of Swords, which I don't like to think of them as like one is further along than the other. It's just a different expression of that energy. And while the queen is good at making sure she communicates things in a way that is reinforcing her boundaries and is coming away in a cross that will be received well, sometimes the king of swords kind of has more of an edge to him where it's like he's a little bit more intense in his confidence in what he's thinking. It does still require empathy and require that tie in to like how other people are going to be affected by your decisions. But I do find it interesting that it's coming in at this point where it's like we've had that reinforcement of the Queen of Pentacles, the High Priestess, and it's like almost like you get this masculine boost of clarity in the middle of the month where it's like you have the confidence of a mediocre man, even if you are a woman, you know? It's sort of unfortunate that it's coming out that way, but it's like you don't question yourself even if you don't have all the pieces. You have this clarity where you're like, no, I know this is going to work. I'm going to get to it no matter what, and nothing is going to stop me. And it's not a fire energy. Again, we have to keep in mind this is sword, so this is still air, but it's like this clarity where it's almost like you don't need to have the action necessarily figured out. You're just like becoming very clear in this moment. And so it's almost a continuation of that high priestess where it's still very much about like receiving the downloads, having the information, but it's like you processed it to death, you know, like the king is like, you have processed it through all 1 to 10. You've processed it through, you know, the page, the knight, the queen to the ending point where you're like, okay, if I'm not sure now, I'm never going to be sure. And that's where that sometimes confidence without being, you know, backed up by the pentacles and all the other things. You're just like, you know what? The idea is there. It's clear. It's right in front of me. I can see it with my own eyes. Let's just get going on it. And I will draw out the plans as we go. I think that energy is needed at this point. And I think there's evidence in how many of these court cards we've been through at this point where it's almost like there's nothing else to say. It's like you've talked it to death and the king is like, "Okay, we enough chit chat. Let's just do the thing." And so it's matching up with that energy we already had of that fire energy of let's do it, let's take action. So it's like even if there's some part of you in your mind that's been holding you back, and you're going to feel that Aries frustration of I have to do this. If I don't do it, I'm going to feel so frustrated in my body. I have to just try it. And that's where it's like an intervention mid-month to be like, okay, you were on a roll there. You took a weird pause, but we need to keep going. You can't leave it just running in the background. It's like you've left a car idling and the neighbor is like, okay, where are you going? Like, are you coming or staying? You're wasting energy. You're polluting. And really, you're not doing anyone any favors. There's nothing positive coming out of you just sitting idling in your car. Just get going, keep going. You're on the right route. The GPS is already programmed. Please just go. It's this weird kick in the ass from spirit that is just you don't have to know everything. It's in the GPS. And if you keep following it, the next step will show up. And I think the reason for this too is it ties back to the resources to me, where it's like you're wasting gas, you're wasting energy, you're wasting money. The money is there. You just have to go. Like the more you get on the high, this is sounding weirdly specific. And I do feel like this is like a male guide coming through or something, but it's like your miles per gallon are going to be better if you get on the highway and just set it on cruise control and just trust it than if you start navigating all of the potential side routes that will maybe save you some time or maybe avoid a bit of traffic, but like you're going to end up taking 10 times longer and wasting more gas. So there is this sort of like fast tracking of just get back on the highway. You know what you're doing, trust yourself, and you're going to get there. You're going to see the results. You're going to get there before everyone else. You're going to get more out of it. You're going to be rewarded when you get there, and you're going to be first in line for the goodie bag. I don't know why that's coming through, but it is. So that just feels like the energy of this week. So it may be challenging. And that might be why you're being asked to get on the highway. Like get away from the city, get away from all the people, just get on the highway and go. Because maybe there's a lot of traffic in town that's going to slow you down if you stop to check all of your usual spots on the way out.
There's definitely something in that energy that I think you're so spot on about not necessarily looking backwards to dictate the outcome of your future. There's something to be said about trusting what is actually in front of you versus what you think is the right timing. Timing's gone out the window. So really, yeah, the energy I think ramps up this week right away on the 5th. The sun is going to be square Jupiter. I describe this energy as like everyone is too close. Everybody's standing too close. Everyone's in your space. And Jupiter, because it's in moody Cancer, there's a little bit of that crab energy of like back up away from my shell. I need to be either by myself or I need to be in the space and in the energy that feels really good. Venus, of course, and Taurus is going to be emphasizing that. But the sun in Aries being square, you're going to feel this push pull of like, I want to be together, but I don't want to be together. Not with you, maybe sometime later. So be aware of any resentment that might kind of bubble up because it's going to feel restless, not just for you, but for everybody. So I think this is just kind of comes with that like yellow flashing warning light. Be careful around this first part of the month. The 9th, Mars moves into Aries, and this is where I feel like things really start to take off. This is only going to last until May 18th. Mars, of course, is moving pretty quickly at this point, but it's going to feel so excited. I mean, Mars is thrilled to be in Aries. It can hardly stand it. The momentum and action, charge after your dreams. It's just going to fuel that fire that is already burning at this point. So what I really recommend is be careful. And I like that you brought up the car analogy, that your drive doesn't lead you to overpower someone else on the road or cut someone else off in traffic and throw them off their path. You've got a month of this energy. You don't have to blow through that first tank of gas in the first week. spread it out. You've got some time to use it. And Saturn, unfortunately, being in Aries right now is like it's like pushing on the gas pedal. Go faster, go more. So you're going to have to be aware of how you manage this yourself. And that's where I think that king energy comes in. Anything is possible, but you're the one in charge. So how are you going to lead? How are you going to step into leadership in some way? The 10th, we have that third quarter moon in Capricorn. I really encourage you at this point to kind of look at your 2026 goals in general. I know it has kind of fallen out of fashion to do our New Year's resolutions like we had been in December, January, but you still have goals that you want to achieve this year. And I think this waning Capricorn energy is a really good point for you to get back to a project you started and maybe let slide. Or if you've been focused on something and it didn't work out the way you want, it's a great chance to regroup, check the numbers, figure out like where did something maybe go wrong and structurally readjust things. That's yeah, it's a busy week.
I feel like that 3-quarter Capricorn moon, that energy of checking in is going to be like highlighted for the next week. So for the end of the season, from the 12th to the 18th, I like that we're ending with a Pentacles card because Earth into Earth energy, because we're going into Taurus at this point, really does make sense to me. And we actually got the Ten of Pentacles. So even though this is the first number card that we're getting in a while, it's a very positive one. Like we went from the Nine of Wands, if you remember, to the Ten of Pentacles. 9 to 10, but it's like that waiting energy of like, we're almost there. This is like, you're there. You're getting the signs, you're getting the money, whatever the energy that grounds you is. If it's getting the feedback you need or getting the connection that you need, getting the emotional fulfillment that you need, even though it's a Pentacles card, I feel like this is coming through differently for different people. But I feel like there's going to be some sort of material affirmation that you're on the right path, whether it is a paycheck or a new job or a promise or a contract or something is going to be coming through in this energy that solidifies that holding strong. Like think about all of the cards this month. They're all about holding your energy. We went from the Magician to the Queen of Pentacles, High Priestess, King of Swords, right to Ten of Pentacles. So it's like if you held your energy through all of that chaotic whatever, you're going to see the results. And I think that I'm almost like feeling into this energy too, where it's like I'm more energized and certain that this is actually happening. I do feel like the fact that as much as it's become a sentimental connection for us to stay cautiously optimistic for the last 4 years, we may have to let that go and just be optimistic regardless at this point. Throw caution to the wind is a literal thing right now. I think that we're being asked to do. And I think the ways that we're being cautious is by protecting others, but it's in a more aggressive way now. It's not like a cautiously optimistic, like, oh, maybe I won't do that at all. Maybe now's not the time. It's always going to be the time now. Let's just assume if you have the idea, the material is there, the opportunity is there, just do it. I feel like we're past the point of we'll circle back in 6 months. I think we don't want to miss out on this fresh energy. Like Emily has said many times, if we have been listening, that some of this energy we have not had in a very long time and we will not have again in our lifetime. So it really is a now or never energy, not in the way where it's feeling you to force into something that doesn't feel right. But it's like when those things align, when the opportunity is there, you can put yourself out there. You can take that job. You can put your hat in the ring. Whatever that is in front of you, that is a now or never energy. If the energy is not working and you feel like it's sticky, then yeah, it does mean you have to pivot a little bit or that there's still a little bit missing. But I think for a lot of people, there are opportunities that you've been thinking about for a long time, and all of a sudden the energy just is there. And we haven't maybe trusted it in the past because it has been a little bit shaky, but this is the time that it will work. I think the fact that we have all of these court cards, all of these major arcana, and then a 10 of Pentacles. It's not even like we ended with a 3 or something where you're like, okay, maybe we're going back to the drawing board. Maybe we're readjusting. We're not. It's saying you are there. You have done the work. You will get some sort of reward. Obviously, as we've said, like it always looks different for everyone. And that isn't going to necessarily mean that all of a sudden you have $1 million in the bank account. But you're going to get that first paycheck or that first sign or that first sale of the new thing that you're putting out there. Like there is an energy that will confirm for you that this is the right direction. And if you've made it through this whole chaos of April with all of these big things happening by holding your energy, there is a tangible reward on the other side of it. And I think the 10 of Pentacles also speaks to like just the acknowledgement for yourself that you have built that, that it was you, that is your energy that got you to that point because it's the end of a cycle. The 10 is the end of a cycle. So, yes, and we're going to go through like the page and the night and all of that. That's more of, I feel like a processing or the transition energy into the next thing. But I think this is the point where you actually just see it. It's done. Yeah, I'm going to do some processing, maybe some adjusting, changing course, whatever. But I did it and I'm on my way to that King of Pentacles legacy energy. Like this is something that matters and I did it. So I think if you can keep that in mind, that it's a reward for holding your energy, if you can kind of keep that magician all the way through to this point, it's going to be hard. But I think we will actually see as something tangible that is something we can hold on to until the next wave of the cycle.
This is a tricky one because really, I think not only is this like the wildest, most electric week of Aries season, but other than July, the most electrifying week of the year. We've got this rare, super rare, because everything in 2026 is brand new and haven't experienced, but this rare planetary pileup in Aries, and it's this feeling of pressure cooker. And I think that when you were talking about the 10 of Pentacles, it's that feeling of you're almost there. Um, I'm just going to dive into it because there's so much to unpack with this. On the 13th, we're going to have Mars conjunct Neptune because all of these planets are going to meet up and pass the slower movers. So Neptune and Saturn are going to get passed by everybody. At this point, because Mars and Neptune are again both in Aries, you're going to kind of overflow with courage, but because that courage, that Mars energy is meeting up with Neptune, it comes with compassion, which I think is going to be so interesting to experience after 14 years of Mars meeting Neptune in Pisces. Um, Mars is going to give it like this really big boost to sort of stir up idealism in a way that we haven't experienced in a while. So, this is that energy of pushing you to go after something that matters to your soul. And I talk about this being the really tricky thing because it's tough to keep things practical when you're talking about something that's soul level, true to you. It doesn't look the same for everybody. So have that compassion and courage and allow it for others as well. And I really think, like, if you haven't been journaling through all of this, I highly encourage it because you're going to see small seeds that have been planted all the way through this part of spring and early part of 2026 that are going to play out for years to come. So check back to things that you're thinking or feeling at this point down the road. On the 14th, now Mercury moves into Aries because, of course, we're out of retrograde. It flew back across Pisces and now it is flying into Aries. It's only going to be here a short amount of time, but that mental fog is going to burn off and you're just going to be flooded not only with ideas, but just you're going to feel sharp and fast and ready to pivot and ready to make a move and take something on. It's like you're going to be an idea machine. And this again is where you're going to have to manage that 10 of Pentacles and some of that King of Swords. All of those things are coming in, that magician energy to harness the power because you're going to be feeling in some ways unstoppable. This is where I worry how this will play out on a global scale because if everyone's feeling unstoppable, someone will be put to a stop in one way or another. Just putting my tinfoil hat on for a moment and throwing that into the ring. Um, Also, just make sure that when you rush fast forward into these things, you might be prone to making costly mistakes. And everything is going to be pushing you to go faster and faster. So take your time, check the details, just make sure you're not completely distracted by every road stop attraction. All right, the 15th. This to me is when it really gets intense because for 2 days, the 16th and the 17th, we have our biggest amplification of Aries energy because now the moon joins this backup. So we've got 7 bodies, and this doesn't even include some of the secondary asteroids and other things. That's a whole nother podcast all by itself. But we've got the sun, the moon, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Neptune, and Chiron, all within less than 30 degrees of one another in the sign of Aries. And then 2 of them, 2 sets of 2 are going to meet up with each other in the next 2 days. So this again is just unprecedented. Anything is possible. What direction are we going? On the 16th, right away, this is that next day, um, the sun is going to conjunct Chiron. This is at the final degrees of Aries. They're meeting up at about 28, 29 degrees. And Mercury is going to conjunct Neptune because it's just flying into the beginning degrees and meet up with it at like 1 or 2 degrees. So Mercury and Neptune at 2 degrees, I feel like this is your words getting jumbled, or maybe your mind is moving faster than your mouth. Watch that disconnect in some way, because anytime Mercury meets up with Neptune, things get a little disjointed. Neptune blurs the edges. So if Mercury is trying to make these really clear, fast, concise conversations and topics, Neptune's like, and you just forgot all your words. So now you're going to mime your coffee order. And if things get heated, watch that you maybe need to take a break or pull away before something gets super dramatic. Things are going to escalate quickly because everyone's going to be going louder, more, 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 building on top of each other. Then we have the sun connected with Chiron, that kind of ouch point, right? This is happening at about 26, 27 degrees. And these two meet every year. And this will be the last time that they meet in Aries for nearly 50 years. So, what again have you healed in terms of your self-doubt, and how can you move through finding a new way to embrace some of these parts of yourself that need to feel the love and the worthiness, and what are you standing up for? Without necessarily trampling everyone around you. This is where that Aries energy gets a little carried away. On the 17th, we have the new moon in Aries. I encourage you to start over on something. It's an opportunity to reset, particularly with that Aries energy, leaving the past behind. I think we had a huge dose of that with the King of Swords, just reminding you to check on things, kick off a solo project, maybe do something on your own because nobody else is going to quite see the vision yet. And then on the 19th, not to give a total spoiler alert, but not only does the sun move into Taurus, it does it quite late in the day on the 19th. And it's actually kind of early. It generally moves in on the 20th or 21st. So there's kind of some early Taurus energy coming in. And Mars is going to conjunct Saturn in Aries the same day. So it's courage meeting discipline somehow, right as everything kind of screeches to a halt in Taurus. Because Taurus is slow and steady. We will all get there. It's about the journey, not the race, but everything is going to be telling us it's about the race. So it's a wild, fiery end to Aries season. It's still kind of abstract. It's so far away. I can't imagine what that's really going to look like in a month, because we're still reverberating from those eclipses. But without a doubt, we are in the thick of it now.
Yeah, I almost got a picture in my head that transition from Aries into Taurus will be like the Taurus part of you will be telling you to stop at the lookout point on the side of the highway to take in the view, even though everyone else is like honking at you to get past you. And I think that's where that choice comes in of I know what's going to feel right for me. So even though there's this like pressure telling me to keep going, maybe I'm going to get the photo of my life or like the inspiration of my life by taking that detour. So I think, yeah, we're going to be fighting a lot of the pressure to trust what, again, what Emily was saying, like that thing that's in your soul. That's going to be really the hard part, is like staying focused on that thing that you know is meant for you when everything around you is telling to like rush in a different direction. So I'm, again, feeling like this is very out there at the moment, but I think because we're getting a handle on it, we have this awareness now, we're tuned into it now. Like where I was saying, like, you could hear the forces coming even before you see them. I think if you're able to be tuned in and discerning and being in your own body the whole time, you maybe won't feel it as intensely as somebody that's just blindly following the crowd that also doesn't know where they're going. So I think that's the problem with everyone feeling so confident and so courageous at the same time is even the people who are loudly wrong are going to be loud in their wrongness. And so I think that's where, like, more than ever, it's so important to really tune into yourself and trust that because just know that anybody out there yelling into the void doesn't mean that they know what they're doing either. Everyone's just saying what they think in the moment. So if you're going to believe anyone, believe yourself, believe your higher self, believe your guides, believe your body. I think at this point, more than anything, especially as we have this transition into Taurus, which is notoriously about the body and about feeling grounded, feeling the sensations of life. I think that transition will be one that you feel in your body more than most of the others in the year, that transition from Aries into Taurus. And I think if you're already doing that, you'll probably be okay.
I actually like that Venus kind of leads the drive into Taurus because I feel like that will help as then Mercury is going to fly across, Mars will get there. We'll have a really beautiful pocket of kind of the calmest astrological weather of the year between May and June, where we can all take a breath. And I'm just really going to encourage everybody to keep that in mind. There is a pocket coming before things ramp up again towards July when it is the fireworks of the year. So, yeah, just hang in there and we'll see how this plays out. But keeping your own dreams and actions at the forefront and that Robin Hood energy just keeps coming in. We have this beautiful Pluto in Aquarius, and I can't help but laugh because Aquarius is not afraid to break the rules. So Pluto is not going to act traditional in this sense. And if you can keep that kind of Robin Hood energy and that humor that goes with it as, yeah, we're breaking the rules because we're making it better. And you guys didn't even see us coming because, yeah, we're not playing by your rules. If you're not playing by our rules, we're not playing by yours. And that's where I'm hopeful that some of this energy coming in is a very kind of revolutionary power to the people moment. Um, I think we've got enough things in action happening through all of the countries that I mentioned when we did the Gaining Light episode. You know, China, Russia, Northern Africa, we've got the United States. Of course, Cuba is kind of coming into play now. We're going to watch how the astrocartography lines up for that July astrology right across Cuba, right across Greenland. So there's still more in the shadows waiting to come out, but hang in there. You are the magician of your own life. I think that is the big message for this month.
Yeah, I think it's sort of that time of year where you know there's so much coming that all you can do is hold on. Make sure you're buckled in and just keep going. And I think, yeah, we all know that what we are capable of. And if we just trust that, we'll be okay. And then on that note, what is it that you have coming up, Emily? How can you support people while they're weathering this insane storm of April?
That's so sweet. I appreciate that. No, I'm not super crazy busy coming into this. Of course, I'm on Spirit Social. It's wonderful. There's even a freemium version now you can connect with us on. You get to scroll the feed, pull the daily cards, kind of get an idea of what's going on. And then if you want to jump into the join, that gives you access to a ridiculous amount of free events every single month. So I'm over there. I'm going to have an Akashic demonstration coming up again in May, likely. And then I'm starting a new Zodiac series. So there'll be a little talk every month about the current Zodiac energy. So catch me over there. And then my calendar is already pretty full. There might be one or two spots left at the end, but I think by the time this airs, March will be completely full. I am booking into April and May. And even those April spots are kind of getting swept up. I've got some medical things coming up that may affect how much availability there is that month. So we'll see. And then, of course, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. I only send one a month. I think I've sent two in a month once, and I felt really bad for annoying people. I'm not an everyday newsletter girl. But one of the greatest things about subscribing to that newsletter and looking for it is not only do you get the astrology and the calendar for free that you can print on your wall, but I also do offerings that are only available to subscribers. So if you missed the 2026 and you readings, it's because they were the newsletter only. So super secret tip there. And yeah, I think it's going to be a lot just to get sort of this pressure cooker of a month. So I'm keeping it simple and small. Of course, I'm going to have, tarot readings and you can do psychic with me, Akashic, whatever comes up, because I do also feel likely that people will feel something come to a head in terms of healing this month.
I love that. I feel like keeping it simple during this energy is the way to go. I'm similar to Emily. I don't have much going on in terms of like new offerings or anything a little too outrageous. I do have my newsletter coming out on the 1st. And similarly to Emily, it's like the one time a month that I actually get my shit together and have it all in one place. So if you would like one simplified version of all of the random things I'm doing, that's the place to get it. I've been incorporating a lot more of what I'm doing in my art, as well as the usual. You're going to get the tarot readings, the forecasts. Sometimes I throw in some journal prompts that are related to the cards that are coming through, which I've been trying to do a little more consistently because I feel like we need it in this energy. And then the other thing, I'm not sure if it will be in the April newsletter or the May newsletter, but I am thinking of bringing back my online for my prints because I've had so many people where I've been sending one-offs when people reach out to me. So I think it's a time to start doing that. So if you're interested in the first drops, I'm going to do similarly to Emily, where I will be sharing in my newsletter before it goes to Instagram and all the other places, just because I feel like that's the people that are usually reaching out to me are the people who get the newsletter and ask about it. So I'm going to be doing that as well. But yeah, there's a few spaces left for your intuitive card readings and the other things that I have going on behind the scenes, but I'm trying to keep it a bit of a low profile too. So I don't have a ton available, but they are there. If you don't see any, feel free to reach out. Sometimes I just only conservatively put some out and I will see what I can do. But for the most part, I'm booking into April and May as well.
I love it. And you have so many amazing shows coming up and openings and classes coming. So you have a very busy schedule. I can see where we will wave from afar to one another as every season kicks.
Yeah, it's definitely peak season for shows, especially group shows. It's the first year in a while that I haven't done any solo shows, but the group shows have increased just as much. So I thought it was going to have less shows overall, but it's working out to be more shows. But it's really fun. I love exhibiting with other people because then I get to see more art at the same time. When I'm so busy that I can't get out to all the shows, at least at my shows that I'm going to, I get to see a lot of different people's work. So it's an exciting time and it's really fun. And another piece actually to that is if you are more local to Ontario or Muskoka and you want to know what's happening, because I'm also teaching classes. That's the other piece of it. I'm teaching dry point and lino cut, and I'll be at the Halliburton School of Art and Design for some May classes. So if you are more local and you want to know what's happening, and when those things are going on, I do have a locals only list that I'm going to send out when I have things that are specific to the area. So that's another thing I'm adding, just so that, like Emily, I only send one a month. And so if I do send anything additional in terms of local things, it will be similarly just like one additional newsletter a month, where sometimes things don't line up with the first for me to get dates. So it'll be that one other day when I have everything organized for you.
I love it. I can't wait to see all of the exciting things that come from your beautiful creation. Fern is nudging me from beneath the desk. Her snoring has ceased, and so I think we'll wrap up this episode today, but thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, as always, reach out, send us your questions. How can we support you through this? It will be a very, very fiery Aries season. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.